Hello and welcome back to April-May Codes. Today I'm going to set up the basic structure and title screen for my game. I've already created a new project called Pygame Valley because I'm entirely unoriginal, so let's go ahead and get started. To start, I'm going to make two directories. The first is going to be called Assets. This is where we'll keep all of our fonts and sprite sheets and sounds once we get there. And the next is going to be called Game, which is where we'll keep our game. In Game, I'm going to go ahead and get the config.py file out of the way. This file is going to get much longer as we build the game, but to start, I just need 5 values in here. Those are screen width equals 1280, screen height equals 720, and then we want some colors. White equals, these are RGB values, so 255, 255, 255 for white. Black is 000. And then I've got a nice little pink color that I like for the background of the title screen. And that is 245, 186, and 218. So that's it for config.py. Now we'll go ahead and create my game state manager. This is what's going to run the game. So in game, we'll make a new file, game state manager.py. In that file, we'll start by importing Pygame. I've already installed Pygame, but if you haven't, if you're using PyCharm like I am, you just need to hover over this and click Install Package. Otherwise, you would use pip in the terminal, pip install Pygame. Now we'll make our class game state manager. It doesn't inherit from anything. So we'll go ahead and do a init, which just takes self. And then we want to call pygame.init. Next, I'm going to do pygame.mouse.setVisible. Whoops. And we're going to make that false because I want to use a custom cursor that I'll do later in the video instead of the regular mouse icon. Then we'll set our screen. So self.screen is equal to pygame.display.setMode. We'll do config.screenWidth and config.screenHeight. And we've got these red lines here because we need to import config. There we go. Now I'll go ahead and set a caption. So we'll do pygame.display.setCaption, and we'll just call it Pygame Valley for now. Eventually I'll come up with a better name for it, but this works for now. We'll need a clock, so self.clock equals pygame.time.C clock with the parentheses after it. Now I want two attributes, a self.running and a self.playing. We're going to set running to true and playing to false. While the game is running, the state manager loop will execute. While the game is playing, the game loop will execute. I'm hoping that distinction will keep time from passing in the game while it's paused or while we're on the title menu. We'll see if we run into any errors with that later on. Next, I'm going to do self.statestat is equal to an empty list because we haven't added our states yet. Self.dt for delta time is equal to 0. I don't fully understand delta time, so doing this may be a mistake, but I don't actually want the time to count while I'm not playing the game, so we're going to set it to 0 until self.playing is true. Now I'm going to put in the actions. That's a dictionary. And these are the controls we're going to check for. It'd take me a minute to type them all out, so I've got them typed ahead of time. I'm going to just copy and paste that in, and then I'll explain how it works. So we'll put that here. And these are all the controls for the game. I've got Q and E in there because I'm not sure what I want those keys to do yet. But then I've got inventory, that will be the I key. Map will be the M key. Crafting will be the C key. There's left mouse, right mouse. Left, right, up, and down are the arrow keys. Move left, move right, move up, and move down are WASD. I haven't committed to a control scheme yet, but these are the actions I want to check for now. Now we need to do something with these actions. So we'll go ahead and create the check events function. Doing it this way I got from the Pokemon clone tutorial series by Bad Coding Habits, but don't be turned off by the name. It was a really great tutorial. I like setting the action to true when pressed and false when the key is up, instead of just checking for key presses and performing the action then. I think it's a bit neater this way. So for check events, it would take a minute to type it all out because we have to check for each key. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. So we will copy this and paste that right after the actions. Whoops, need to unindent. There we go. So the first thing that we do is loop through all of the events in Pygame. We do that by calling for event in pygame.event.get. If the event.type is equal to pygame.capital_quit, that's checking if the X in the top right corner is clicked. So if that X is clicked, we're going to set self.running and self.playing both to false. That will close our game. Then we'll go through if the event.type is equal to pygame.keyDown. So if a keyboard key is pressed, we'll check the key. If it's K return, that's enter. K left is the left arrow key. And if those keys are pressed, we'll set the action for that key to true. That's true for the up, right, left, and down, WASD, we've got I for inventory, and so on. Same for the mouse buttons. If event.type is equal to pygame.mousebuttonDown, we'll set the we'll check if the event.button is equal to 1, that's the left mouse, and if it's 3, that's the right mouse. So we'll set those to true. Then we're going to check for the key up events. And if the key is let up, we'll set that action to false. Same for the mouse button. If the event.type is mouse button up, we'll set the left mouse or the right mouse to false. Now we'll go ahead and add a reset keys function that we'll call to reset all the actions to false when we need to. So def reset keys, that's just going to take self, and that's going to do for action in self.actions, self.actions, action is equal to false. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're familiar with Python. So I won't go too much into how that works, but it just goes through each key in the actions dictionary and sets it to false. Okay, so now the game manager needs a draw text function. And that's going to take self. I got this from CD Codes also. I believe it's in his menus tutorial. That and the Bad Coding Habits Pokemon clone tutorial will be linked in the description. So draw text will take self, a surface to draw the text to, the text, a size, a color, and X and Y coordinates. Now, I'm only using one font for my game, so I'm going to go ahead and create the font inside the draw text function. If you're using multiple fonts, you'll want to create it outside of the function and maybe pass the font as an argument to the draw text function in addition to the other parameters there. But since I'm just using the one, we're going to go ahead and create font here. So font is equal to pygame.font.capital font, and then the path. So that's going to be assets/fonts/ and then my font is called Stardew Valley.ttf. And then that also takes a size, which is one of the arguments we pass in. We'll just put size there. Now let me go ahead and create a fonts folder and paste my font in. There we go. All right, now our text surface is equal to font.render, and then our text, true for anti-aliasing, which I don't know what that is, and then the color. And then our text rect is equal to text surface dot get rect. And then our text rect dot center will be equal to our x and y coordinates. And finally, we'll call surface, which is one of the arguments, dot blit, the text surface, and the text rect. And that's it for the draw text function. Let's go ahead and create the manager loop now just to see if everything's working. So in the check events, I'll go ahead and add a couple print statements just to make sure that that's working right. So when the left mouse button is clicked, we'll print left mouse. And when the enter key is pressed, we'll print enter. All right. Now we need to create the manager loop. So we'll do def manager loop. I call this manager loop instead of game loop because in the game.py file that I'll create in a future video, I'm going to have a game loop. So I just wanted to easily be able to differentiate between the two. So in manager loop, we want to do wall self.running and not self.playing. And we'll just start by calling check events. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. And our cursor isn't going to show because it's set to false and we haven't created our cursor sprite yet, but we should still be able to click with it. Oh, I forgot to put this in main.py. So we need to do game manager is equal to game state manager. And we need to import that. And then while game manager.running, we'll call game manager.manager loop. All right, let's see how that works. I'll move this up so you can see what's being printed. And if I click the screen, there's left mouse, and if I hit enter, there's enter. So that's all working pretty well. All right. So far, so good. So let's go ahead and create the title menu. For that, I need two base classes. This is also from CD Code's tutorials on game states and on menus. Those will be linked in the description. You should check them out. So I'm going to make a states directory inside of our game folder. And then I'm going to make two files. One will be menu.py and one will be state.py. All right, I'll start with menu. So we'll need to import Pygame. And then from game, import config. And we'll create our class, which doesn't inherit from anything. Do init. And that's going to take self and game manager. Self.game manager is equal to game manager. And self.mid width, self.mid height is equal to config.screen width divided by 2, config.screen height divided by 2. These values aren't totally necessary, but it's just an easier way to access those center of the screen values. So then the cursor.rect or self.cursor underscore rect is equal to pygame.rect with a capital R. We'll do 0, 0, 20, 20. I believe that's the X, Y, width, and height. Then we just need a draw cursor function, which will take self. And that's just going to be self.GameManager dot draw text, and the surface is going to be self.GameManager.screen. An asterisk is the text. Size is 60. We'll make it white, so that'll be config.white. And then the x and y coordinates are self.cursorrect.x and self.cursorrect.y. And that is it for the menu. On to state. So we'll create a class state, which doesn't inherit from anything. Call init, and that's going to take game manager and a name. The name may not be necessary, but for now I'm going to keep it in there. I think it will be useful when zoning, determining where you're zoning from, which state was the previous state, so we start the player in the right place when they zone. We'll see. So self.GameManager is equal to game manager, and self.name is equal to name. And then we'll do self.previous state, and we'll set that equal to none initially because there's no state, so there is no previous state. Then we need an update function, which will take self, delta time, and actions. We're just going to pass. Def render will take self and surface. We're just going to pass. And then enter state. We're first going to check if the length of self.GameManager, oops, I misspelled that. There we go. Dot state stat is greater than 1. So if there's more than one thing in the state stack, that means there was a previous state. So self.previous state will equal self.GameManager.stateStack -1, so the last thing in the state stack. And then we'll do self.GameManager.stateStack.append self. So we'll append this state to the state stack. We want to make sure we do that after we set the previous state because we don't want to set the current state to the previous state. And then we just need def exit state, and that's going to do self.GameManager.stateStack.pop. And I'm not in love with this exit state method because I think it's not going to set the previous state properly, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So now that I have these two base classes, I can go ahead and create my title class. That's going to go in states as well. So we can close these. We don't need that anymore, but we will be coming back to Game State Manager in a minute. In states, we'll make our new file called title.py. All right. So first we need to import a few things. The first is Pygame. Import Pygame. And then from game.states.menu, import menu. From game.states.state, import state. Then we'll create our class title, which is a state. It inherits from state and from menu. Then we'll do def init, and that's going to take self, game manager, and a name. Then we'll do state.init, which takes self, game manager, name, and menu.init, which takes self and game manager. Okay. Now I've got some images already made for the title screen. I just made these in tiled using a sprite sheet that I bought on itch.io, so I'll link that asset pack in the description as well if you want to check it out. I made them in tiled and exported them as images. Let me grab those real quick. Put that in assets in a folder called title, and it's just these 3 images: an exit button, a load game button, and a new game button. And now that I'm a little bit more familiar with Photoshop, I know I should have cropped these much better. It would have made positioning them on the screen easier. I wouldn't have to do so much guess and checking. But these work for now. So in title.py, we're going to do self.newImage for the new game button. And that is going to be pygame.transform.scale because we need to resize it. Then we'll load the image, pygame.image.load, assets/title/new game.png. And then the second argument is the size, which is 128 by 128. Just copy this and paste it a couple times. And we'll put our load image is called load game. And our exit image is called exit. Okay. Now we need coordinates for our images. So self.new x, self.new y, and those are equal to self.mid width minus 200 for new x, and self.mid height for new y. Self.load x, self.load y is equal to self.mid width minus, I think, 70, yep, and self.mid height, and self.exit x, self.exit y is equal to self.mid width plus 60 and self.mid height. All right, now we need recs for all of these. So self.new rect is equal to pygame.rect. Coordinates are going to be self.new x, self.new y. Size is going to be 128, not 218, by 128. We'll copy that. And then we want our load rect to be our load x and our load y coordinates, and our exit rect will be our exit x and our exit y. All right, we've got our recs. Then self.cursor, that comes from menu. Self.cursor rect.center is going to be self.new x, self.new y. That's because when we start our game, when we open up the title screen, we want the cursor to start on the new game option. Now I'll create a menu options dictionary that holds our indexes and the cursor positions for each. So that self.menu options is a dictionary with each index. So for 0, it's new game with self.midwidth minus 130. 1 is load, self.midwidth, and 2 is exit, self.midwidth plus 130. And these numbers here and these numbers here, it was a lot of guess and checking. I would put the images on the screen, see it needs to be moved to the right some or to the left some. There's probably a better way, especially if the images were cropped right. I wouldn't have to do so much guessing. But this worked. When you're trying to split stuff on the screen, sometimes you just gotta guess. All right, and then self.index, it's going to be equal to 0 to start because we're starting with the new game. Now we need a move cursor function, which will take self and actions. So we'll do def move cursor, self and actions. If actions right, so if we press the right arrow key, self.index plus equals 1. And then if self.index is equal to 3, which is outside of the length of our dictionary, then we'll set self.index back to 0. And I need 2 equal signs there. There we go. If actions left, we're going to do the same thing but in reverse. So self.index minus equals 1. And if self.index is less than 0, then self.index is equal to 2. So if you press left when you're on a new game, it will take you back to exit. And then finally, we'll redraw our cursor rect where the index is. So self.cursorRect.x, and we're doing just the x because the y position is going to stay the same. It's going to stay at the same height, regardless of which option it's on. We're just moving it left and right. So self.cursorRect.x is equal to self.menuOptions, and then the index, and then 1, because the first thing in the index, oops, that needs to be self.index. The first thing, the 0 value in the index, is this new game load or exit, and then 1 is the second thing in the list, which is the position. All right. Now we need an update function, which will overwrite the update function in state. Take self, delta time, and actions. First in update, we're going to call self.moveCursor. We probably could have just wrote all of that code in the update function instead of having a separate function, but I think it's a bit neater this way. So we'll call self.moveCursor, which is going to take action. And then we'll get the mouse position, which we'll put in a variable called pause. So pause equals pause equals pygame.mouse.getPause. All right, now, if actions enter, so if we press the enter key, we're going to check what index we're on. So if self.index is equal to 0, then we're on the new game, and we'll print new game. If self.index is equal to 1, we'll print load game. If self dot is equal to 2, then we're going to go ahead and close the game. So we'll do self.running, self.playing are both equal to false. Okay. All right, then we need to check for mouse input. So in order to do that, we need buttons. So let's do render. We'll set our render function. So def render is going to take self and surface. And we'll do self.GameManager.Screen.Fill, and we'll do config.pink. It's that pink color we set in our config file. So let's import that. Okay. And then self.new button is equal to self.GameManager.Screen.lit self.new image self.new rect. And then we're going to do that same thing for the load and the exit. This will be load button. This will be exit button. And that's going to be load image and load rect. And then this is going to be exit image and exit rect. And then we need to draw the cursor. So self.drawCursor, that comes from menu. All right, now our buttons exist. So let's go back to the update function right up here and check if the action is left mouse. So if the left mouse is clicked. If self.new button.collide point pause. So what that does is checks if the pause, which is the mouse position, collides with the new button rect. So if it does, we're going to print new game. If self.load button.collide point paused, we're going to print load game. And then if self.exit button.collide point pause, we're going to do self.running and self.playing equal to false false. All right, and then lastly, we need to call self.GameManager.reset keys. All right, now our title exists, so we need to pass it into our state manager. So we're going to do this in a load states function. So let's go ahead and call that as soon as we create the game manager class. To minimize this. So right here, we'll call self.load states. And down here, right here, we'll create def load states, which will just take self, and we'll do self.title is equal to title, and that's going to take self as the game manager and title as the name, and we need to import that. And then we'll do self.statestack.append self.title, and that appends the title state to the state stack. And we called load states. So now we need an update and a render method for our game manager. So we'll do def update. We'll take self. And that's just going to be self.statestack -1. So the most recent thing in the state stack dot update, which is going to take delta time, so self.dt, and action, so self.actions. And then render, we'll do self.stateStack -1 dot render, which takes a surface, which is going to be self.screen, and then self.screen.blit, pygame.transform.scale, self.screen, config.screen width, config.screen height, and then 0, 0. And I believe what this does is just redraws the screen so that it will update. And then we're going to do pygame.display.flip. I don't fully understand why that works, but it does. Now let's call these methods in our manager loop. So after self.checkEvents, we'll do self.render and then self.update. All right, now let's look at our title menu and see if everything's working. You know what? I put load states before I created the state stack. So we just need to put this line after the state stack. There we go. Now if I hit enter here, let me move this so you can see what's being printed. It prints new game, and it's printing enter because I didn't get rid of my old print statements. But there's load game, and that should close it. Oh, it didn't close it. Why not? Because it's self.game-manager.running and self.game-manager.playing. Same for the mouse input. All right, that should work. There we go. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is add the cursor to our game state manager. So let's go ahead and make our cursor. Let me get the cursor sprite. That's going to go in assets in a new directory called cursors. And I'll paste the game cursor. I just called it gamecursor.png. Okay. And then in game, we need a new directory for sprites. And then a new file called cursor.py. Okay. So we'll import Pygame as usual. And then our class cursor inherits from pygame.sprite.S sprite. Def init will take self, game manager, and groups. Self.game manager equals game manager. Self.groups is equal to groups. And self.image is equal to pygame.transform because we need to change the size of this one, .scale. And then our image, pygame.image.load. And that is in assets / cursors / game cursor.png. And then the second argument is the size. We're going to do 32 by 32. And then self.rect is equal to self.image.getRect. And self.rect.center is equal to pygame.mouse.getPause. All right, now it needs an update method, and that's just going to do self.rect.center is equal to pygame.mouse.getPause. All right, so now let's add our cursor to the game state manager. So first we need a group. So self.cursor group is equal to pygame.sprite.group, and self.cursor, we'll call it game cursor since we've got a menu cursor as well, is equal to a cursor, which takes self because it needs a game manager, and then self.cursor group for the group. Now we'll import cursor. And then we'll do self.gamecursor.rect.center is equal to pygame.mouse.getPause. And that might be redundant since we do that when we knit the cursor as well, but we'll see. All right, so now let's go ahead and draw it on the screen. So down in render, let's find render right here. Right before we do pygame.display.flip, we're going to do self.screen.blit, our self.gamecursor.image, and our self.gamecursor.rect. Okay. And then finally, in our manager loop, we need to draw and update the cursor. So right after update, we'll do self.cursorgroup.draw, which takes the surface, self.screen, and then we'll do self.gamecursor.update. All right, that should be everything. Let's make sure it works. If we click on new game, move this up here so you can see, it prints new game. Click on load game, it prints load game. We can use our arrow keys and our keyboard. And if we click on exit with the mouse, it closes. Perfect. All right, I think that is all for today. We got our title menu up with buttons that take keyboard input and mouse input. We can click to close the game, and it all runs pretty smoothly. Next time, I think I'll briefly go over how I created the map in Tiled for anyone interested in that, and then I'll create the player class and start on the game world. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.